Hi and welcome to Sci-Fi Fans, the podcast of pop culture and movie trivia. Regular listeners will know that my favourite film of all time is Aliens. My second favourite film is The Italian Job, the original 1969 version. So you can imagine, as a young lad at 17, when Alien 3 was released, I had a lot of hope for this film. I was very excited and I just started to build a very comprehensive Alien collection. Film filled with models and posters and anything that I could get hold of. It was because of my fascination for aliens that I came into contact with a guy called Gary Bunn. Gary helped me with my collection. He also knew a chap called Harry Harris, who has a phenomenal alien collection. I remember in 1992 going to see Alien 3 at the premiere that was being shown at the Odeon, Leicester Square in London. Alien 3 is the third film in the Aliens franchise, and it had quite a lot of difficulty during production and going through many directors and an ever-increasing budget by the time a relatively unknown director, David Fincher, got the task of directing the sequel to one of the best films of all time. A task which I think has proven to be very difficult, given the fact that, in my opinion, Ridley Scott has tried and failed to give us a decent Alien film. Ridley Scott has indeed taken the franchise with the prequels into a whole new direction. And then we have the Alien TV show that is on the horizon, which Scott is attached to as a producer or chief executive, I believe. Alien 3 would see Sigourney Weaver reprise her role of Ellen Ripley. However, we would not see Michael Biehn as Corporal Hicks or Carrie Henn as Newt in any future films. Michael Biehn, though, did reprise his role for the disappointing Aliens Colonial Marines video game. The cast of Alien 3 is prominently British, with Charles S. Dutton as Darlin, Charles Dance as Clements, Paul McGann as Walter Gollick, Brian Glover as Harold Andrews, Danny Webb as Rob Morse, and Lance Henriksen returning as Bishop and Bishop 2. Part of the problem with Alien 3 is the introduction to Ripley and what happens on board the Sulaco. We have an alien egg on board the ship somehow, never really explained, it just kind of appears on the door, and surprisingly this sets off a chain of events that causes a fire on board the Sulaco, and then an automated computer system goes into action and jettisons the survivors, Ripley, Newton Hicks and the mangled Bishop. But there is a problem with the escape pod as it is being jettisoned. It spirals out of control and crash lands on Fury 161, which is a bleak wasteland, former prison planet owned by, yet again, the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. Ripley, naturally enough, is met with scepticism about the alien creature, and their very precarious situation becomes once again returning. It just happens, and then the franchise kind of returns to the usual situation where we have an alien on the loose and everybody's in danger. Alien 3 kind of reverted back to Alien, and this was taking away the weapons and technology. And this is an idea that they had in the original, or one of the many scripts that weren't used for the film. One such idea was a totally mind-bending scenario, was to actually have the planet made out of wood. Now, I do appreciate that Alien isn't real and it's science fiction, and I totally get that, but come on guys, let's be realistic. How on earth would a wooden planet in space actually be possible? Now, I'll leave that up to you, and perhaps you can get in touch with me or leave a comment if you can and tell me what you think and whether or not that would work, because it just seems a little bit daft to me. The Alien 3 was put through a lot of production chaos and nightmare, and it just blew through the budget like there was no tomorrow. The budgets keep on escalating. Sigourney Weaver, when she was told that she would be bald in Alien 3 because of the lice on the planet, and everybody else would be bald as well, jokingly, and I do wonder how much of this was a joke that she said, she kind of smiled and said, well, that's fine, but obviously this is going to cost you more money. Bearing in mind that Sigourney Weaver's salary for Alien 3 was a record for a female actress at $5.5 million. Alien 3 was made on a budget of, it varies from whichever source you read, it varies from 50 million to 68 million. But one figure that doesn't really vary, and that is the amount that it would gross. So it would gross $159.8 million at the worldwide box office. Despite that, though, to this day, some people still consider Alien 3 a flop. David Fincher was heavily criticised by fans and critics with the tone and style of the film. And, sorry, Alien 3 almost ended his career before it actually had a chance to take off. However, Sigourney Weaver publicly and very often angrily sided with David Fincher and insisted that if they'd left him alone, 20th Century Fox that is, we would have had a very different film. However, because of their interference, this made the situation impossible for the young director. And she backed him all the way to the hilt and explicitly said that he would have an excellent career given a fair chance. And I think that is something that has been proven true. And an example of the struggle that David Fincher had is the scene in which the alien faces off against Ripley. This is done in the infirmary. Now, originally, David Fincher was ordered against filming this particular scene. And if you're wondering what the scene is that I'm talking about, I'll give you a little bit more detail. It is the scene where the alien comes face to face with Ripley in the infirmary, and we see the alien like hisses at Ripley while she's trying to get away, and she's backed up against a cupboard or something. Now, they filmed this by Fincher grabbing Sigourney Weaver and a camera, and they shot the scene anyway, despite 20th Century Fox objections. But it's actually gone on to be one of the most iconic scenes in the entire franchise, even if they weren't supposed to film it. Sometimes these kind of edits, they don't make the final cut of the film, but in this instance, this particular scene was used widely for the trailers, and it is in the film as well. And that's quite an achievement. I mean, how many times have we seen a trailer for a film? I'll take Rogue One, for example. There are many scenes in the Rogue One trailer that don't actually make it in the film. And obviously James Bond, I think there's a couple of scenes there from their trailers. So that scene was actually put in the film and remained there for all of the cuts that Alien 3 went through. As I mentioned, Sigourney Weaver's salary was the largest of any female actress at that time, but they'd also spent $7 million on sets that were never used, and this was due to the continuous changes that the script went through before filming had even started. And even when filming, the scripts were constantly being rewritten, with reports of new versions being faxed over to the studio on almost a daily basis. And that is just total chaos, isn't it? I mean, even the actors weren't spared from the chaos, because they would film a scene only to find out 24 hours later that it had already been scrapped or needed to be reshot or something. Now, I remember reading in an interview at the time as well that Sigourney Weaver felt quite liberated about having her hair shaved, and this was because she could walk the streets of London and nobody would recognise her. The downside of this was, though, her young daughter, who was only 2.5 years old, didn't really recognise or like seeing her mum without any hair. So when they would go out together or spend any time together, in order to keep Charlotte happy, Sigourney Weaver would quite often wear a wig. Michael Biehn stated in an interview as well that he was deeply hurt at not being asked to reprise his role of Hicks, but what really kind of cut him deeply was the fact that Hicks was immediately killed off after escaping with everybody else on the Sulaco. He felt that this was a careless way to omit him from the film. Kerry Han, though, wasn't particularly bothered. She just accepted it as one of those things and said life goes on. Lance Henriksen dislikes Alien 3, although he has admitted to having a lot of fun making it. He only agreed to come back as Bishop because of a personal favour to Walter Hill. After a rough cut of the film was made, Alien 3 spent over a year in editing, while additional filming and reshoots were conducted. And I can just imagine that also added to the cost, making the company just adding to the cost and really not really helping David Fincher at all. A lot of David Fincher's ideas that he had were just basically cut. They didn't give him the backing, and I think that's a shame, really. So, yeah, I mean, during the meeting, when David Fincher met Sigourney Weaver, and this is where the rumour of more money comes from, because this is where he told her that she would have to go bald. But during their initial meeting, Sigourney Weaver immediately thought that his ideas were great and very bold. But then when Fincher asked her about shaving her head, this is where she jokingly said, "It's fine with me as long as I get more money." At the beginning of the film, the escape module is pulled out of the coast by a crane and it's dragged up to dry land. Now, this particular effect, there were many practical effects in Alien 3. Excuse me for a second. Sorry about that. Alien 3 uses a lot of practical effects, and in this particular one, the crane was a miniature, and it was made out of cannibalised parts from a Star Wars X-Wing kit, with the horizontal part of being the fuselage of the X-Wing. The two people that we see standing on top of the EEV were nothing more than static cardboard cutouts dressed with pieces of cloth that were made to move in the wind to simulate the silhouette of real people wearing thick coats. Initially, the alien was going to actually impregnate an ox, and this can be seen in the special edition Alien 3. There was no director's cut of Alien 3 because when 20th Century Fox reached out to David Fincher, and this was to do with the quadology that they were putting together, he told them that he wasn't interested and would not give his consent to any version of Alien 3 being called a director's cut because he totally disowned the project. Going back to the Dogbuster though, initially, as I said, it was going to be an ox, but in the theatrical release, the alien hatches from a dog, a Rottweiler. What they actually did with early testing, they put a dog in an alien costume. Then once they showed the dog and they filmed this, they kind of felt that it didn't look right, so they changed their idea. The dog that they used, incidentally, initially was a Whippet and was owned by one of the special effects crew. But as I say, when they tried this out, the special effects team felt that the dog's movements made the alien look too comical, so the idea was scrapped in favour of a puppet. This is an example of 20th Century Fox changing the original concept from the ox to the dog. You can watch the original scene in the assembled cut. Because of the crash, the android Bishop was too severely damaged in the script to have Lance Henriksen continue the role in a prosthetic head. So what they did was they decided that it wouldn't be practical for him to hide under the table or for them to use a clever bit of film photography for him to play this bit. So they ended up having a completely animated mechanical copy of Lance Henriksen's appearance, and at the time this was the most sophisticated and state-of-the-art motion-controlled puppet ever used in film. Newt's autopsy scene was heavily edited and cut down. After a rough cut of the scene was made in the original, there was, in this original version of the scene, there was a lot more gore. Even the crew members who worked on it felt sick to the stomach. Alien 3 has a number of firsts for the franchise. One of them is this is the first time that we see the xenomorph feeding off of a victim. It also needed also at the 10-minute mark, Dr. Clements says Fury 161 being one of Weyland-Yutani's backwater prison planets. Now, this is the first time that any character in the Alien films says the name Weyland-Yutani. The rest of the other characters in dialogue, in reference to Weyland-Yutani, just simply call it the company. Part of H.R. Giger's designs for the film had an alien with lips, and his idea being that the alien would kiss its victims and this would lead to them dying. This idea was later used in the movie Species in 1995, which is another one of Giger's creations. In an original draft of the script, there was no Ripley, and in this draft they had Hicks, Newt and Bishop fighting the xenomorphs, with Ripley coming back in the fourth film to save the day. These ideas were all rejected by Fox. Now, did you realise Alien 3 is the only film out of the quadrilogy that does not have flamethrowers as weapons? There's a little bit of nugget of information for you there. They used four different Rottweilers were used to portray Spike, and that's very similar to Jonesy in Alien, as they used multiple gingered cats to portray him. Another coincidence with Alien is Paul McGann. Paul McGann would later go on and play the Doctor in a 1996 TV movie, and he would return to the role many years later, with John Hurt replacing him as the War Doctor. So, a little bit of role reversal there. Alien 3 was the 28th highest grossing film of 1992, and that's where I'm going to wrap up this episode. So thank you so much for listening to me ramble on about my favourite franchise. Do you have any questions or any content that you'd like me to make? Then please do get in touch. You can contact me at wayneblinko.com, links in the description. And yeah, I'd like to see you on my other platforms as well, such as TikTok and YouTube. I do use Facebook. I'm not a big user of Facebook at the moment, so something that I will probably be doing a bit more of in the future. So go to my website, wayneblinko.com, and check out my other channels. And thank you very much for stopping by and allowing me to talk to you about films and pop culture. Stay tuned for some more exciting videos and episodes on the podcast coming very soon. Look after yourselves, and I'll be back next week.